6 years after divorce, she entered a bakery with her son, unaware her ex-mafia boss was inside. It was the kind of morning that made the world seem smaller, more intimate, as though everything outside had slowed down just enough for someone to notice it. Alara pulled her coat tighter around herself, the hood shielding her from the drizzle. In her other hand, she held the small, delicate hand of her son, Lucian. He was 6 now, with dark hair like hers and curious eyes that seemed to notice every little detail around him. He hummed softly as they walked, the sound echoing in the quiet street. Alara smiled gently at him. For these brief moments the past felt distant. "Mom, do we have to walk so far?" Lucian asked, tugging lightly at her hand. Alara laughed, the sound soft and light. "Just a little farther, my little man. The bakery is right around the corner." She had spent the last 6 years building a life just like this, quiet, ordinary, and safe. A life that kept the past at bay. The bakery came into view. Its windows were fogged from the warmth inside, and the aroma of fresh bread and sugar wafted out, wrapping around them like a soft embrace. Alara opened the door and stepped in, shaking off the rain from her coat. Lucian ran ahead, eager to see the display of pastries and cakes. The inside of the bakery was warm, welcoming, and cheerful. Wooden shelves lined the walls, filled with rows of golden bread, flaky croissants, and colorful sweets. A bell tinkled softly as they entered, announcing their presence. The baker, a kind-looking woman with flour-dusted hands, gave them a bright smile. "Good morning," she said. "First time here. Let's decide after we pick a few breads first." His dark hair was slightly tousled, and the lines on his face suggested years of experience and authority. For a brief, frozen moment, Alara's heart skipped. She knew that face. She had known it for years. It belonged to Dante Valery, her ex-husband, a man she had left 6 years ago to escape the danger and darkness that had consumed their lives. She had thought she would never see him again, not here, not now, not in this quiet, sunlit bakery. Dante's eyes, sharp and observant, flicked toward her the instant she noticed him. Recognition passed between them like a spark. For a long second, neither moved. Memories flooded back, passionate nights, whispered threats, dangerous promises, and the final bitter fight that had torn them apart. Alara took a deep breath, steadying herself. She had a life now, a son to protect, a routine to maintain. She would not let old ghosts haunt her quiet morning. She turned away and focused on Lucian, who was happily pointing at breads and pastries. Dante, however, did not look away. There was a storm behind his calm gaze, a mix of longing and regret. He had changed, yes. Time and experience had tempered him. But some parts of him, the parts that had loved her fiercely and controlled his world with iron strength, had never faded. He watched her, careful not to appear threatening, but every instinct in him screamed to rise and walk over to her. Lucian's voice brought her back to the present. "Mom, can I get a chocolate croissant too?" He had known danger like few could imagine. But now, seeing her here, so ordinary and yet so vibrant, he felt a pull he could not resist. He wanted to speak, to apologize, to explain, to warn. He was not yet sure what. But the memory of how he had lost her 6 years ago weighed on him like a chain. Alara picked up a loaf of bread and moved toward the door. Lucian ran ahead, clutching a small chocolate croissant. She followed him, holding her coat tightly, pretending to be absorbed in the simple, mundane task of carrying their purchases. Dante rose slowly from his chair, the movement silent and deliberate. He kept his distance, careful not to frighten Lucian. He watched them leave, each step she took stirring something deep within him, a mixture of regret, desire, and a strange hope he had thought long buried. Outside, the rain had softened to a gentle drizzle. Alara opened the bakery door and stepped into the cool morning air. Lucian bounced ahead, oblivious to the tension behind him. "Come on, Mom. Let's go home," he said, his voice filled with simple joy. Alara followed, keeping her eyes on the path ahead. She felt a shiver of unease but tried to shake it off. "Home," she said quietly, more to herself than to him. "Just home." He lingered in the shadows, watching her from the doorway, knowing that the life she had built was something he had no right to disturb, yet feeling that he could not walk away. He had been her husband once. He had known her, loved her, and lost her. That loss had haunted him every day since. Alara led Lucian down the street, unaware that the man she had left behind was silently tracing their path, moving like a shadow. Memories and emotions she thought long buried began to stir, though she could not yet name them. At the corner, Lucian stopped to look at a small fountain. Water glimmered in the early light, splashing softly, the sound soothing in the quiet street. He reached out, letting the water run over his small fingers, giggling. Alara knelt beside him, brushing wet strands of hair from his face. "You've grown so much, Lucian," she whispered. "You're such a brave boy." But Dante, watching from a distance, saw something else, something she could not. He saw the boy she carried in her arms, the same boy whose existence he had only recently learned. He saw the bloodline, the link to a life he had lost, and something inside him snapped, half rage, half awe, half desire. He thought of the 6 years apart, the regret, the mistakes, the nights he had spent haunted by her memory. And now here she was, alive, vibrant, and protected by the son he had never known. The knowledge both thrilled and tormented him. Alara finally reached her modest home at the edge of town. She unlocked the door and ushered Lucian inside, setting down their small basket of bread and pastries. Lucian ran off to play, leaving her alone for the first time that morning. She leaned against the doorframe, taking a deep breath. The past, she realized, was not as far behind her as she had thought. She could feel it in the rain, in the wind, and now in the presence of someone she had hoped to forget. Outside, Dante stood beneath the drizzle, watching her home. He had not moved an inch since she entered the bakery, and he would not move yet. He knew that one word, one step could change everything. He also knew that he was no longer the same man she had left. And yet the pull between them, the history and unspoken feelings, remained as strong as ever. He turned slowly, melting into the shadows, a plan forming in his mind. He would not approach her today. Not yet. But he would follow, watch, and protect, silently if he had to. The boy, the life she had built, and the woman herself were all too precious to leave to chance. Alara, unaware of the silent storm outside her home, sat by the window looking at Lucian as he played. A soft, uneasy feeling brushed against her heart. Something was coming, something she could not yet name. And somewhere hidden in the rainy streets, Dante Valerie made a silent vow. This time he would not let her go. The next morning the town woke slowly under a soft gray sky. Rain had left the streets wet and glimmering, and the smell of wet earth lingered in the air. Alara moved carefully through the quiet streets with Lucian, who skipped happily beside her, humming a tune he had invented. She had promised him a trip to the park after breakfast, a small joy she allowed herself in the calm of their life. Alara carried a sense of purpose in her steps. Life had been hard, yes, but it was hers. 6 years ago she had walked away from a life of danger and uncertainty. She had left Dante Valerie, the man who had once been her world but had also been her prison. She had left to protect herself, to protect the little boy she now held close, and to find peace. Peace had been a fragile thing, yet she had found it here. The town was quiet, the people kind, and the streets predictable. Nothing in this simple, ordered life reminded her of the power, fear, and danger she had once known, or so she thought. But shadows of the past have a way of finding their way back. Dante Valerie had spent the night wandering the streets near her home, hidden beneath his coat, unseen. He had watched as she moved through the quiet morning, her hand brushing Lucian's hair, her eyes bright with affection. And then he had seen it, the small, undeniable proof that the child was his. Lucian's dark hair, the shape of his eyes, the faint curve of his smile, all unmistakably Dante's. The realization hit him with a force he could not ignore. The boy, innocent and unaware, carried a part of him he had thought lost forever. His breath caught, and for a moment he felt a mix of awe, fear, and regret. The memory of the day she had left him came rushing back. She had disappeared into the night, carrying nothing but a small suitcase and the boy she would never tell him about. Dante had searched, begged, and fought to find her, but she had vanished like mist. For 6 long years, he had imagined her pain, her courage, and the child they shared, a child he had never held. Now she was here. The boy was here, and she had no idea he had seen them. Dante followed at a careful distance as Alara and Lucian made their way to the small park near the edge of town. Lucian ran ahead, his laughter ringing like sunlight through the damp morning. Alara smiled at him, her heart swelling with love and pride. She had worked hard to create a life where he could be free, happy, and safe. She had done everything in her power to keep the past from touching them. But Dante, silent and unseen, knew that the past was never so easily left behind. As Lucian climbed the small slide and swung high on the swings, Dante watched from a shadowed corner, the storm of emotions inside him nearly overwhelming. He had always been a man of control, of calculated power, but now he felt vulnerable, exposed by the simple presence of his son and the woman who had once held his heart. He thought of her face, the way she had looked at him in the bakery yesterday, unaware, cautious, and radiant. She had changed. She had grown stronger, kinder, more resilient. And yet beneath it all he saw traces of the woman he had loved and lost. Alara noticed a movement from the corner of her eye, a shadow flickering between the trees. She turned slightly, her pulse quickening. For a moment she thought it might be nothing, but then a memory surfaced, unbidden and sharp. The sharp look in eyes that had once commanded fear, a presence that could never go unnoticed. Her heart skipped. Could it be him? No, it was impossible. 6 years. He would not dare. And yet a cold thread of fear threaded through her chest. Lucian called to her, breaking her thoughts. "Mom, look. I can go higher." He watched as she called to Lucian, as she wiped a smear of dirt from his cheek, as she tucked a stray strand of hair behind his ear. He saw the gentle authority in her movements, the love and patience she radiated, and he felt a pang of longing sharper than he had known in years. He had been a man of power, a man feared by many. He had controlled empires, commanded loyalty, and ruled with an iron will. But none of that mattered now. In this moment, he was nothing but a man who had lost the woman he loved and had discovered a son he never knew he had. Memories returned unbidden. He remembered the nights they had spent together, hidden from the world, consumed by passion and ambition. He remembered the arguments, the betrayals, and the night she had finally walked away, leaving him with nothing but emptiness. Alara had her own memories. She remembered his sharp words, his commanding presence, and the dangerous allure he had carried like a cloak. She remembered the love she had once felt, fierce and consuming, but also the fear. She had left not because she did not love him, but because she could not survive in a world where love had been bound by control and shadows. And now, seeing him again, she felt something stir inside her, a mixture of fear, anger, and something she could not name. Her life had been rebuilt, and yet the mere presence of Dante Valerie reminded her of everything she had left behind. Dante knew he could not approach her, not yet. He had to be careful. Any misstep could shatter the fragile life she had built, put his son in danger, and destroy any chance of reconciliation. He had learned patience in the years apart, and he would use it now. Alara finally gathered Lucian, who had grown tired of the swings and slide. They began walking back toward their home, her arm around his small shoulders. She glanced over her shoulder once, half expecting to see the shadow she had sensed earlier, but the street was empty. Dante followed silently, a step behind, careful not to be seen. He watched as she navigated the streets, noting every detail, the way she moved, the softness in her voice, the care she showed her son. He realized then that she had changed in ways he could not have imagined. She was no longer the woman he had known. She was stronger, more independent, and yet still utterly captivating. As they approached their home, Dante paused. He needed to know for certain. He had to be sure Lucian was his son. He had watched her closely, seen the way she interacted with the boy, and all signs pointed to the truth. Yet he needed confirmation. A moment, a word, a gesture that would tell him without doubt. He waited as Alara unlocked the door and ushered Lucian inside. The boy ran ahead, chattering happily about the chocolate croissant they had shared from the bakery. Alara followed, her heart still slightly heavy with unease. Dante remained outside, hidden beneath the shadow of a nearby tree. He watched the small window glow with warm light, illuminating the faces of the two people who had changed his world forever. He felt a strange mixture of longing and regret, knowing that the moment had arrived where he could no longer deny the bond that connected him to them. He would have to act, soon. Inside, Alara placed the basket of pastries on the kitchen table and took a deep breath. The warmth of the home, the laughter of her son, and the quiet safety of the room gave her a sense of peace she had not felt in years. Yet deep inside, a flicker of unease lingered. Something from the past had returned, something she could not yet understand. Lucian ran to her, holding a small paper with a drawing he had made. "Look, Mom. I drew you and me at the park." Alara turned slightly, her eyes scanning the quiet street outside. Nothing. Yet the feeling persisted, a quiet, insistent hum at the edge of her awareness. Dante Valery stood just beyond the fence, hidden in the shadows, watching. He had confirmed it. Lucian was his son. The boy he had never known, the child he had unknowingly longed for all these years, belonged to him. The realization brought a mixture of joy, fear, and determination. He knew what he had to do. He could not rush in, not yet. But he would find a way to reconnect with them, to protect them, and perhaps, in time, to heal the wounds of the past. Alara, meanwhile, felt the weight of something she could not name pressing against her chest. She could not shake the sense that her quiet life was about to change, that the shadows she had worked so hard to leave behind were stirring once more. As dusk fell over the town, painting the streets in shades of gray and gold, Dante slipped quietly into the night. He had a plan, and he would see it through. The past, he knew, had not finished with them yet. Alara tucked Lucian into bed that night, listening to his soft breathing. She kissed his forehead, feeling the warmth and love that had become her anchor. Yet, as she pulled the covers tight around him, a chill ran down her spine. Something was coming. She could feel it in the air, in the silence, in the shadows that seemed to move just beyond the lamplight. And somewhere, hidden in the darkness, Dante Valery watched, waiting for the right moment to step forward and reclaim the pieces of his life he had lost. The following morning, sunlight filtered softly through the clouds, painting the town in shades of gold and gray. Alara had risen early, preparing breakfast for Lucian before school. The little boy hummed happily, his laughter filling the kitchen, a melody she had grown to treasure over the years. It was the calm, ordinary life she had fought to protect, and she clung to it fiercely. Yet the calm of the morning was fragile. Unseen, Dante Valery watched from a distance, leaning against the shadowed corner of a nearby building. He had spent the night pacing the streets, turning over plans in his mind. 6 years had taught him patience, but also the art of timing. He knew that the first step must be cautious, measured. He could not frighten her or endanger Lucian. And yet, every fiber of him longed to step forward, to speak, to touch, to reclaim the life he had lost. Alara, unaware of his presence, finished packing Lucian's lunch. She kissed his forehead, ruffling his dark hair. "Have a good day at school, my little hero," she whispered. Lucian grinned. "I will, Mom. I'll make sure the dragons don't get anyone." She closed the door behind him and exhaled, feeling the small ache of solitude that always came when he left. This was her life now, simple, quiet, safe. And yet, something in the air felt different today, something she could not name. Dante had been watching from a distance, unseen. As Lucian ran toward school, he felt a surge of protectiveness that surprised him. He had never been a father in the ordinary sense, but now, seeing his son, feeling the silent bond between them, he realized just how deep his responsibility went. He had been a man of power, of empires and shadows, but now his heart was tethered to something far more fragile: family. He followed her cautiously when she left the house to run errands, blending with the quiet crowd of townspeople. Alara moved with a calm purpose, yet Dante could see the careful vigilance in her movements. She was alert, always aware, a woman shaped by years of experience and survival. He felt a pang of admiration and longing. As she passed a small market, a minor commotion erupted. A cart had tipped over, spilling fruit onto the wet street. People rushed to help, slipping on the wet cobblestones. Lucian had been safely at school, but Dante noticed the way Alara's hands moved quickly, efficiently, helping to gather the scattered produce. Her eyes scanned the crowd, always aware, always assessing. He stepped closer, pretending to pass by casually. His presence alone brought an unspoken tension to the scene. Alara glanced at him briefly, a flicker of recognition in her eyes, though she could not place it. He smiled faintly, offering no words, just the subtle reassurance of a stranger helping in the chaos. "Thank you," she said, her voice polite but cautious. Dante nodded, watching her carefully. "It's nothing," he replied, keeping his tone light, neutral. Even in this small interaction, the air between them crackled. There was history here, unspoken and unresolved, a dangerous attraction that neither could ignore. Dante could see the hesitation in her movements, the flicker of tension that betrayed her careful composure. And he knew she was still as captivating as ever, though she had hardened, grown stronger, and learned to protect herself. They parted shortly after, each continuing on their way, but neither could shake the unspoken connection that lingered like smoke between them. Dante decided he could not wait any longer. He needed to know. He needed to see Lucian, to understand the boy who had changed his life without him even realizing it. Later that afternoon, he followed Alara to a small playground near the edge of town, keeping to the shadows. Lucian played happily, running through the swings and slides, unaware of the silent figure watching over him. Alara kept a careful eye on him, her posture protective, always scanning the surroundings. Dante observed quietly, noting how she had grown into her role as mother, how her love for Lucian was fierce and unwavering. He knew he could not remain hidden forever. He had to find a way to approach her, to speak without causing fear, without shattering the fragile peace she had built. But the task was harder than he anticipated. Her eyes, sharp and intelligent, could see through deception, through lies, through half-truths. He would have to be honest, but timing was everything. The opportunity came sooner than he expected. As Lucian ran toward a group of children, one of them tripped, falling awkwardly against the wet ground. Lucian hesitated for a moment, unsure what to do. Alara's voice rang out, calm and commanding. "Lucian, stay there, I'll help him." Her eyes narrowed slightly, but she did not step back. There was something in his gaze, something familiar, something she could not place. "Thank you," she said cautiously. Dante nodded, his expression softening. "Of course, it's nothing." The tension between them was palpable, a dangerous attraction simmering just beneath the surface. Dante's heart raced, though he kept his movements controlled, careful not to frighten her. As the child ran off, Alara turned to leave, her mind filled with unease. Something about the man unsettled her, and yet she could not deny the strange sense of familiarity, the pull she felt toward him. She walked quickly, keeping Lucian close, while Dante followed, maintaining a careful distance. The streets were quiet, the town seemingly oblivious to the storm brewing between them. Dante's mind raced. He had spent 6 years thinking of her, longing for her, imagining the boy who was his son. And now here they were, ordinary and fragile, yet powerful in their own way. He knew the next step was crucial. He had to speak, but he had to do so carefully. One wrong word, one wrong move could destroy everything, the trust, the peace, the delicate balance of their lives. And yet every moment he waited felt like an eternity. Alara sensed him again, a shadow at the edge of her awareness. She glanced over her shoulder, her heart quickening. She could not explain why, but something in the way he moved, in the air around him, made her uneasy. The memory of the man she had left, the dangerous, commanding figure who had once ruled her life, surfaced unbidden. "Mom, look!" Lucian's voice broke through her thoughts. He had found a small stone shaped like a heart. "Can I keep it?" "Of course, Lucian, it's very special." Not to frighten her, not to claim her but to show that he had changed, that he could be trusted, and perhaps in time to earn a place in their lives once more. The opportunity came as they stopped near a small fountain. Lucian crouched to examine the water, his reflection rippling on the surface. Ilara watched him, her back to the street. Dante stepped forward, careful to remain calm, his presence deliberate yet non-threatening. "Ilara," he said softly, his voice carrying just enough for her to hear. She froze, her heart skipping a beat. The name alone brought a rush of memories, both painful and tender. Slowly she turned to face him, her eyes wide with shock and disbelief. "Dante," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "What are you doing here?" He saw the boy who was his son, and something inside him shifted. He knew without a doubt that Lucian was his child. Ilara's mind raced. How much did he know? Could she trust him? Could she risk the life she had built for the last 6 years? And yet she could see the truth in his eyes, the sincerity, the restraint, the longing. The moment stretched between them, heavy with unspoken words and emotions. Dante took a careful step closer, his voice low and measured. "He's incredible," he said, glancing at Lucian, "just like his mother." The air between them was electric, charged with the tension of the past and the possibilities of the future. Neither knew what the next step would be, but both understood that their lives had changed forever. As the sun dipped behind the clouds, casting long shadows across the fountain, Dante spoke again. "I know I have no right, but I want to be part of his life. And maybe, in time, part of yours." Lucian laughed, breaking the tension, and ran to her side. She held him close, her mind spinning with questions, fears, and possibilities. Dante watched them, knowing that the real challenge had just begun. He would need patience, care, and time to earn their trust. But for the first time in 6 years, he felt a spark of hope that had nothing to do with power, control, or danger. It had everything to do with love. The evening air hung heavy with the scent of rain-soaked earth and distant smoke. The town had grown quiet again, as if holding its breath. Ilara had returned home from her errands, Lucian already asleep, dreaming of chocolate croissants and playground adventures. She sat alone in the small living room, a cup of tea warming her hands, her mind still tangled with thoughts of Dante Valerie. 6 years had passed, and yet in a single day he had returned, not as a shadow, not as a memory, but as a presence she could neither ignore nor understand. His eyes, sharp and intense, had held a depth she had not seen before, and his words had carried an unfamiliar gentleness. The man who had once commanded fear and respect now commanded something else, something quieter, yet far more powerful. Ilara sipped her tea slowly, thinking of the boy asleep upstairs. Lucian was her anchor, the reason she had built a life of simplicity and safety. She could not allow the past to interfere, no matter how much it tugged at her heart. Yet a part of her, the part that had once loved Dante fiercely, could not deny the pull she still felt. Meanwhile, Dante lingered at the edge of the street outside her home, hidden in the shadows. He had observed her through the window, noting every subtle movement, every small gesture that revealed her love and care for their son. He had seen her strength, her independence, and the quiet authority she carried effortlessly. And he had felt, deep within himself, a longing he could no longer suppress. He knew he had to act carefully. The last thing he wanted was to frighten her or disrupt the fragile life she had built. But he also knew that time was slipping away. Lucian deserved to know him, to have both parents in his life, even if circumstances had separated them. And Ilara, she deserved the truth, no matter how difficult. The next morning Dante returned, this time closer, approaching deliberately but cautiously. He spotted Ilara walking toward the small market with Lucian at her side, and he decided to make his presence known, but gently, without causing alarm. "Ilara," he called softly, careful to keep his voice calm. She turned sharply, her heart racing. There was no mistaking that voice. Her mind raced. How had he found her so quickly? Was he here to threaten her, or something else? Dante kept his hands visible, a soft, reassuring smile on his lips. "I wanted to talk," he said, Just talk, there's no danger here. Because I have regrets, he admitted quietly. Because I need to tell you the truth, about the past and about Lucian. Dante stepped closer, his voice steady, calm. I know I have no right, not after all this time, but he is my son, Ilara, and I want to be part of his life if you'll allow me. Could she face the man she had once loved and left and survive the storm of old emotions that his presence brought? Lucian, sensing the tension, tugged at her hand. "Mom, who is that?" he asked innocently. Ilara looked down at him, her chest tightening. She forced a gentle smile. "Just someone we know, Lucian. Now let's get home." He followed at a careful distance, observing the boy, watching the small interactions between mother and child, understanding more with each passing moment. He realized that his redemption would not come easily. He would have to earn her trust, show her that he had changed, and prove that his intentions were pure. That night, Dante could not sleep. He thought of the bakery, of the park, of every small moment he had observed. He knew that the time for cautious observation would soon end. He had to confront the past, confront his own mistakes, and face the consequences of the life he had led. Meanwhile, Ilara lay awake, her thoughts restless. She could not deny the pull she felt toward him, nor could she ignore the fear that came with his presence. The man who had once controlled her life so completely now stood outside it, quiet and patient, yet impossible to forget. The following day, the opportunity for confrontation arrived in an unexpected way. A minor scuffle broke out in the marketplace. A group of strangers, rough and unkind, began harassing the shopkeepers, tipping crates and scattering goods. Lucian, who had come along with his mother, froze in fear, and Ilara's instincts immediately kicked in. She stepped forward, trying to intervene, but the strangers ignored her. Dante, nearby and unseen, moved quickly. His presence was calm but commanding. With precise movements, he stepped between Ilara and the threat, his voice low and authoritative. "Leave them alone," he said. The strangers froze, recognizing something in his demeanor they could not challenge. They muttered curses under their breath but moved away, leaving the marketplace in uneasy silence. Ilara's heart pounded, a mix of fear, relief, and disbelief. She turned to Dante, her eyes wide. Why did you do that?" she asked, voice trembling slightly. Dante's expression softened. "Because I could, and because I would never let anything happen to him or to you if I can help it." He was a man capable of restraint, of protection, of care. And yet the past lingered in every shadow between them. The next moments were quiet, yet charged. Lucian looked up at Dante, curiosity shining in his eyes. "Who are you?" he asked, innocent and unaware of the storm between adults. Dante knelt down to Lucian's level, his voice soft and steady. "I'm someone who wants to know you," he said simply. His eyes met Ilara's, and in them she saw sincerity. A man who had caused pain, who had led a life of shadows, now stood willing to change for them, for the boy. Ilara felt something inside her shift. She could not deny the past, nor could she ignore the danger he had once represented. But she could see the change in him, the truth in his eyes. And she realized, with a mixture of fear and hope, that perhaps together they could face the shadows of the past and build something new. Later that evening they walked home together, a cautious truce forming between them. Dante maintained a respectful distance, careful not to overstep, while Ilara led the way, her mind racing with questions, fears, and possibilities. Lucian walked between them, blissfully unaware of the tension and history that hung over the three of them. At home, Ilara tucked Lucian into bed, lingering to watch him sleep. His peaceful face, so full of innocence and trust, reminded her why she had fought so hard for a life of quiet safety. And yet she could not ignore the feeling that someone, was trying to break through that safety. Dante lingered outside, hidden in the shadows once again. He had watched her throughout the day, seen her strength, her independence, and her love for their son. He knew that the path ahead would not be easy. Redemption is never easy. Trust is never given freely. But he had a plan, a resolve, and the knowledge that some bonds, no matter how fractured by time or circumstance, could not be broken. Days passed, and Dante continued to follow at a careful distance, showing small, subtle acts of protection and support. He helped when needed, disappeared when unnecessary, and never overstepped. The tension between them grew, layered with attraction, fear, and unresolved emotion. Each interaction was a dance of patience and restraint, a delicate balance between past and present. Alara could feel the pull of the past, the memories, and the dangerous attraction between them. She could not deny the moments when she caught his eyes lingering on hers, nor could she ignore the protection he offered, silent but unwavering. Yet she remained cautious. She had built a life of peace, and she would not surrender it lightly. And then, one evening, danger arrived unexpectedly. A group of strangers, perhaps remnants of Dante's old life, appeared near her home. They did not know her nor Lucian, but they carried an air of threat, a whisper of chaos. Alara froze, heart pounding. Before she could act, Dante appeared, his presence commanding, silent, and decisive. He moved between them and the threat, his calm authority radiating like a shield. The strangers hesitated, intimidated by his quiet power. With measured words and precise gestures, he dispersed them, leaving the street in silence once again. Alara's breath came in quick bursts. She turned to him, fear and gratitude mingling in her eyes. Why do you protect us?" she asked softly. Dante's gaze softened. "Because I can, and because I must. You are my world now, whether you believe it or not." He had proven in small ways that he could be trusted. But the true test, the reconciliation of the past, the redemption of his soul, the rebuilding of their lives, had only just begun. Alara, alone in her home, felt the weight of possibility pressing against her heart. She could not deny the pull she felt toward him, nor could she ignore the danger he had once represented. And she knew, deep down, that their lives were about to change forever. The storm of past sins, redemption, and newfound love was only beginning. The morning sun broke over the town with a soft golden light, warming the streets and bathing the rooftops in a gentle glow. Alara stood by the kitchen window, her hands wrapped around a steaming cup of tea. The past few days had been a whirlwind. Dante's careful presence, his protective gestures, and the undeniable bond with Lucian had stirred emotions she thought were long buried. Lucian's laughter echoed from the backyard, chasing a small ball with a neighbor's child. The sound filled her heart with warmth, reminding her of everything she had fought for, the life she had built, the love she nurtured, and the fragile peace she clung to. Yet, despite the serenity of the morning, there was a tension in the air, a quiet awareness that change was coming. Dante had been close, careful not to intrude, but always present. His shadow lingered at the edges of her life, gentle yet insistent, and she could not ignore it any longer. She sighed, placing her cup down. 6 years had passed. 6 years of separation, of memories, of longing. And now here he was, no longer a man of power and fear, but a man transformed, willing to rebuild, to redeem himself, to protect the life he had once lost. Dante stood just beyond the garden gate, his presence unmistakable. When Alara saw him, she felt a shiver run down her spine, a mixture of old fear, recognition, and something softer, something she had thought lost. His dark eyes met hers, steady, calm, yet full of the emotions he could no longer hide. "Alara," he said softly, his voice carrying a weight she had not heard in years. "I need to talk to you." Memories of passion, fear, loss, and longing lingered in the space, unbroken yet softened by the years apart. Finally, Dante spoke. "I have spent 6 years regretting what I lost," he said, voice low and steady. "But I cannot change the past. All I can do is try to be better for you and for him." His eyes flicked toward Lucian, who was playing happily nearby, unaware of the heavy conversation unfolding. "He deserves a father who is present, and I want to be that man if you'll let me." She had imagined this moment countless times, yet the reality was more intense, more complicated than she had ever anticipated. She saw the sincerity in his eyes, the transformation in his demeanor, and the careful restraint he carried. Yet a shadow of doubt lingered, Could she trust him? Could she risk her hard-won peace? "I don't know, Dante," she said softly. 6 years you've been gone. And now you appear asking for a place in our lives. It's not that simple." Instead, she found a man transformed, not the mafia boss she had known, but a man willing to face his past, to face himself, to face the consequences of his actions. Lucian bounded over suddenly, holding a small bouquet of wildflowers. "Mom, look, I picked these for you." "Thank you." Days passed, and Dante remained nearby, earning their trust through small acts of kindness, protection, and patience. He repaired the fence that had begun to sag in the backyard, helped with chores, and offered guidance to Lucian in quiet, unobtrusive ways. Every interaction was measured, deliberate, a dance of care and restraint that gradually began to soften Alara's defenses. One afternoon, as the three of them walked through the marketplace, a sudden shout drew their attention. A man had collapsed, struck by a loose beam from a construction site. Lucian froze in fear, and Alara instinctively moved to help. But before she could reach him, Dante stepped forward, his presence commanding yet gentle. He lifted the beam carefully, helping the man to safety. Alara watched, awe and relief mingling in her heart. She realized fully and completely that the man who had once been danger incarnate was now a guardian, a protector who could stand between them and harm. That evening, as they returned home, Dante lingered on the porch, reluctant to leave but cautious not to intrude. Alara met his gaze, her heart conflicted yet hopeful. "You've changed," she said softly. "I had to," he replied, his eyes unwavering, "for you and for him." And Alara, though cautious, began to allow herself moments of vulnerability, small glimpses of the man she had loved and the man he had become. One evening, a storm rolled in, heavy rain lashing the town. Alara and Lucian huddled by the fireplace, reading stories and sipping hot chocolate. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and a branch struck the window. Lucian gasped, and Alara moved to comfort him. A shadow appeared outside the door. Dante. He had been watching, anticipating danger. He stepped inside calmly, closing the door behind him. "It's all right," he said, voice steady. "I'm here." She looked at him, and for the first time in years she felt she could believe in him fully. Dante approached, kneeling to Lucian's level. "Everything's fine, buddy," he said softly. Lucian's face lit up, and he ran into Dante's arms without hesitation. Alara watched, tears pricking her eyes. She saw the bond between father and son, a connection that could not be broken by time, distance, or fear. And in that moment, she realized that she could allow herself to hope, to trust, to love again. The storm passed, leaving the town washed and bright, the air clean and filled with the scent of renewal. Alara stood by the window, watching the first rays of sunlight illuminate the streets. She felt a quiet peace, fragile but real, settling over her. Dante stepped beside her, his presence steady and reassuring. "Alara," he said softly, "I know I cannot undo the past, but I promise I will never leave again. We will face everything together from now on. We will take it one day at a time together." As the three of them stood together, sunlight warming their faces, the shadows of the past seemed to dissolve. The pain, the mistakes, and the regrets had not disappeared entirely, but they had been acknowledged, confronted, and transformed into something stronger. A family bound not by fear or obligation, but by choice, care, and unwavering love. Dante knelt beside Lucian, ruffling his hair gently. "I promise I'll always be here for you," he said softly. Lucian beamed. "I know, Dad." And together, they would face the future, stronger, united, and ready for whatever life had in store. As the sun set over the quiet town, painting the sky in hues of orange and gold, Alara, Lucian, and Dante stood together on the porch, feeling the warmth of hope, love, and redemption. The journey had been long, the trials many, but the promise of a new beginning shone brighter than any shadow from the past. And for the first time in 6 years, Alara allowed herself to believe that life, love, and family could be whole again.